Well, welcome everyone. This is for the Cymera 2021 role-playing Strand. This is for the Saturday session, and this is session 1, or our session 0 actually, for character creation. And we've got 4 great representatives of the role-playing confraternity here, and I'll let them introduce themselves, and I'll fire it up to Camden first.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you. So I'm Camden. I'm sort of one half with Louise of Tabletop Tales, which is our sort of ongoing D&D blog, and we do maps and other role-playing, other D&D based things on DM's Guild and stuff. But of course, for the past year or so, we haven't been able to play because of various global issues. And last year we both ran a D&D session here at Cymera, so it's nice to be on the other side of the screen.
Oh, great! Well, thanks for being here. And then Anne.
Hi, I'm Anne. I'm actually Chimera's festival director and founder. I'm usually on the other side of the camera, so this is going to be weird. But I love RPGs and I used to play D&D a lot. But I'm very, very rusty, so please be gentle.
All right, thanks. And Lou.
Hi, I'm Louise Carey. I'm the other half with Camden of Tabletop Tales, the D&D blog. I'm also a science fiction and fantasy author, and my debut sci-fi novel, Inscape, is currently out from Galanx.
Available from all good bookshops?
I hope so. I haven't been able to check because pandemic, but fingers crossed.
Let's hope.
And Lou's coming to Chimera to talk about her book as well.
Yeah, so make sure that you jump onto that session and check it out. And then we've got Matt.
Hello, everyone. I'm Matt. I've been gaming for many, many years now with Cam and with Anne, in fact, albeit briefly. I'm part of a loose kind of roundtable podcast discussion every Thursday on Twitter Spaces, and I write my own work for the DM's Guild.
Great, thank you. And I should introduce myself, which is I'm Cameron Hall. I'm going to be the GM for this system, and I'm going to try not to be too intimidated by the fact that Lou and Cam ran their own sessions last year, so I'm going to be GMing for them, and they usually get to GM, and Anne is the director of the festival, so hopefully this session goes well. I have been role-playing for about 35 years now. I think my first character rolled up when I was 8 for Dungeons & Dragons, and played a variety of systems. Tonight we're going to be playing Liminal, which is actually a new system for me. It's bought by Paul Mitchener, and you can get great, lovely hardbound copies of this, and also PDFs. It is a sort of a supernatural setting in which we are based in the British Isles, the Sceptred Isles, and we're going to be playing investigative kind of characters who are trying to pierce the veil and find out about the realities of magic, supernatural, and the Fae. So tonight's session is going to be session 0, where we're going to look at characters, be introduced to the setting and the rules, and start off with a little taster of the adventure that we'll play in the next section, which will be a green and Pleasance land, which is a little tip-off to the venues and locations in Edinburgh that often are associated with Cymera. So first off, I've in the Discord chat we've got 4 characters. And they're just templates, and I kind of emailed to you them. We had them earlier in the week just to have a wee look at. In Liminal, it's a world in which the Fae, the fairy, the pukas, the pucks, and the mischievous spirits exist, but they exist in their lands and their domains that are sometimes, or often, very difficult for humans to find. Some people stumble through to them. Some people know the right twist and turn or the right gate to go through, and they'll get into the lands of Fae. And on some nights, particularly around the old Celtic festivals like Beltane and Samhain, they might get close in and make mischief. There are also spectral, phantasmal, ghostly things, and there are ghostly domains, and they exist in the world. And some people, touched or otherwise, can see or interact with spirits. Then there's also magic itself in this world. Magic exists, and there are people who can influence, use it, or abuse it as well. So you have spectral, magical, and mystical beings, but most of this isn't known to the general public. For over years, there's been a series of both organizations and historical precedences to kind of quieten this up or hush it up, so the general public isn't scared or overrun or overawed by these supernatural things. So tonight, you're going to be starting to learn about 4 characters. You're going to become 4 characters who have trodden the liminal, which is the threaded, the doorway or the space just between our world and the next world. So hopefully you'll have seen 4 characters in the chat. We have what's called the Clued Up Criminal, the Gutter Mage, the Eldritch Scholar, and the Investigator. Now, 2 of those are should hopefully be fairly self-explanatory. The Investigator is someone who makes investigating for a living. They could be a journalist, they could be someone who conspiracy theorist who has kind of tracked down and started following, found a nugget of truth in all that sort of miasma of chat online. Perhaps they had an experience that led them to want to seek out and investigate the other realms. But they have skills, like they're good at researching, they've got good skills to talk with people, to discern whether people are telling them the truth. So they have skills like empathy and maybe charm or etiquette. I'll talk a little bit about the system in a minute, but I'm just going to give you an overview of the characters. So they're, an investigator. Clued Up Criminal. So Clued Up Criminal is someone who is in an organization that is criminal in nature, but also has dealings with the supernatural or the fae. So you might be an organization that shifts antiques or mystical items, or perhaps you work on behalf of a coven of vampires and do their bidding. So you're criminal, but you have access and knowledge of the supernatural. Eldritch Scholar, someone who through their academic research, maybe they strayed into the wrong library or the wrong section of the library and discovered things they weren't meant to find out. Maybe they were cast out of general academia, but they've continued to study and they have deep knowledge and lore of things supernatural and fae. And then there's the Gutter Mage. Gutter Mage is not a magician or a wizard as you would be trained, but someone who's naturally come to their skill. They might have had an awakening in their youth, or something tragic or terrible might have happened, and they awoke the sort of magical nature of themselves and became aware of the magical nature of the world. They're not well trained, but they've got spirit and they've got determination, which can really help them in their battles or their investigations unknown. So we're going to come back to that in a moment. The system, Liminal, is a really great, simple system. Essentially, you're doing whenever you're sort of trying to resolve something. So, for example, whether that's you're trying to suggest or charm somebody into doing something they maybe goes against their nature or they don't want to do, you take your skill, such as charm, which you have a rating between 1 and 4 in as beginning characters. You roll 2d6 and you add your skill to it. And that should give you a number. And normally the number you're trying to get equal to or over is 8. So the great thing is in Liminal, it's assuming that you're all fairly competent, because on 2d6, the average number you roll is 7. So even if you've got a 1 in a skill, you're probably more than likely to get an 8, which is sort of the basic challenge rating, and achieve something. The other thing you've got in Liminal, so you've got skills, which are things like, as I sort of mentioned with the Investigator or the Eldritch Scholar, things like etiquette or awareness or stealth or technology or breaking and entering. These are skills that give you your abilities. Second tier of things you have is traits. Now, traits are things that you're not necessarily, sometimes you're born with, or something they're kind of a passion or a skill that amplifies who you are. And all that will do is add a bonus normally to those dice. So when you're rolling 2d6, you're going to add 2d6, add a skill, and if you've got a trait that helps, you add on to that. That's the very basics of the system. You get a challenge rating, you're going to roll the dice and trying to get equal to or higher. 8's our standard challenge rating. If it's a difficult task, it might be 10. Very difficult task, it might be 12. The other 2 stats that you have, unlike Dungeons & Dragons, you've not got lots of stats like strength and intelligence and wisdom. You've just got those skills. But you do have 2 stats that represent your will and your endurance. Now, will is going to be quite important in this game Because the will is your ability to push yourself to keep going. It's also what you fuel your magic with. It's also what you take damage in as magical or mystical effects take you on. And in this system, it's helped you modify your dice as well. Whenever you roll your 2d6 to make a skill check, you can add will to increase the roll. And this is important because if you fail a roll, let's say you roll a 4, and you've got, say, a skill of 2, you're only getting a 6 under the 8. You can take 2 points of will, bump it up to an 8. You could also bump in more will and succeed better. Because in Liminal, if you succeed by more than 5, it's a critical success and something extraordinary happens. So you either, if it's in combat, your melee attack might be so ferocious it knocks someone back and damages them extra, or you're so great at doing something that you automatically help out a companion or a fellow investigator. The obverse is true as well. If you roll 2 1s, you get a critical failure, and you can't really get your way out of it. You have to spend a lot of will. If you roll 2 1s, something disastrous is going to happen. So that's going to affect the story. It's going to maybe call in more reinforcements. Maybe you're so noisy that it wakes up the neighborhood, or you catastrophically fall off a wall and, land on your companions. Something pretty critical is going to happen. It's very difficult to sort of work your way out of that one. So will, useful for modifying dice rolls. It's also, when we talk about magic, what you use to kind of spend points in will to fuel your magic. The other part of that is endurance, and that's essentially your physical robustness, how much damage you can suffer before you start taking damage. Unlike, say, in other role-playing systems such as Dungeons and Dragons, where sort of hit points kind of represent you getting wounded. In this, endurance is, while you've got endurance, you're okay. You're on your feet. Maybe you're a bit battered and a bit bruised, a bit stunned. But once you hit 0, then you're sort of staggered, like a boxer is when they're a bit punch drunk. You can't take any more damage. Any damage after that is starting to affect you physically, critically, and then you could possibly die. So you're wanting to watch your endurance during this session is you can take endurance damage, but you can also take will damage as well. So certain things will affect your will and take it away. In Liminal, there are 2 ways you can get these sort of things back. Will, once per game, we're going to designate something that's going to be called your character's drive, which is what really motivates them, what gets them going. Why is it that they are seeking or persevering in this world of calamity, supernatural, sometimes horrific things? What keeps them going? And if you can tap into your drive during a session, once per session, you can get D6 will pumped back up. Not more than your original, but you can kind of fill it up and then replenish that sense of going forth and keeping going. You can also take some time out in your investigations if you're able to, and have a rest. And for every sort of day or 2 of rest, or even if you're amazing a week, you're going to be getting D6 endurance back after a good proper rest. There's a possibility some of you might have some skills like medicine and first aid, which you can do in a critical moment, but I'm not sure that your characters will have that just yet. So far, is that starting to make sense for you all? Yeah? Don't forget to ping in. So we're going to talk a little bit about what characters you might want to play. So as I say, there's an Eldritch Scholar there. There is an Investigator. There is a Gutter Mage. And there is a clued up criminal. For any of you, is there anyone in particular that stands out? You're like, oh, I wouldn't mind a character like that we can tweak and sort of flesh out for the mission.
I was quite taken with the clued up criminal. I think I've got a couple of fun ideas for that.
Clued up, nice. So, and anyone else? Is everyone happy for Matt to?
Yeah, I was tempted by the Eldritch sort of scholar researcher type.
Okay, so far we've got some hopes and dreams for a clued up criminal, an Eldritch Scholar. Lou and Anne?
I'm not fast. I don't mind.
I quite like the look of the Gutter Mage. Sounds like kind of a fun character to play.
Great. So that sounds like we've got. So then
cool.
Anne, the Investigator. Yeah.
Good. I'm
fantastic.
pretty nosy, so that works.
So the great thing about those is that's a very basic character framework. What you'll have there is you don't have a character name, don't have any sort of physical descriptor, you've just got sort of a general title, which is your investigator, your eldritch scholar, your clued up criminal, and your gutter mage. So we're going to flesh these out in this session now, and talk a little bit about things like what's driving your character, and more importantly, how is your character connected to the other three in the situation, and why have you formed a tight-knit crew that is willing to put your lives on the line, sometimes your mortal souls on the line, to investigate and discover what is awry in the great city of Edinburgh. So go ahead and just, if you can open up those sheets, you should find them in the Discord chat. Download them as well. You can write them on a piece of paper if you want. But you should see, hopefully on your sheets, that each of you has a series of skills, and they're between 1 to 4. For beginner player characters, Liminal, 4 is your sort of skill cap. 4 is pretty amazing. If you're a 4 in something, particularly say you're a scholar, that sort of doctoral research, you're very well-read, well-rounded. If it's in something like lore, which in Liminal is the understanding or knowledge of supernatural and magical things. If you have something in lore, they have a 3 or a 4, you're very knowledgeable and quite skilled at sort of determining maybe the types or the genus of a fae if you see them, because things like boggarts and boggles are very hard to distinguish between, but someone with high lore might do that. So I take a moment to have a look at your skills on your character sheet. Most of them at Liminal are fairly self-descriptive, but if you're like, I don't know what this means, just yell out and we can discuss what that is. So take a few moments just to have a look at your sheets and have a look at those skills.
I hate to be a bother. Would you be able to email me the criminal sheet? I'm afraid I'm having trouble getting them off the...
That's right. I'm gonna say to Abs, who's our techie in the background, if he could just send that to you at your email, which we'll not say online.
I've sent you a little message, Abs, with my email in it.
Grand. So you want to be clued up criminal. Excellent. But for the others, so there might be one or two. I think one or two of you has taunt, or I think that might be the clued up criminal, which is one of the ones that's not as obvious. Things like awareness, which one or two of you have, is the base skill for determining in a situation, both social situation, but also maybe a dangerous situation or a combat, how aware are you of your situation? What we're going to use to determine who goes first in the scenario as well. So having a high awareness means you're much more perceptive than other people, but also it means usually in combat you would go first. Unlike Dungeons and Dragons, this isn't sort of a tactical combat role-playing game. We're sort of actually basing this on sort of situations and scenes, so it's a little bit looser. I also like to play almost a sort of more cinematic, where it's going to be about being in the moment, enjoying the sort of creating the atmosphere. So we're not going to get too much in the technical minutiae of tactical combat, but more about social situations and scenes and investigating. So are there any questions about what skills you have there, or do they seem relatively self-explanatory?
I've got taunt, and I'm not sure what that is.
So sometimes, and if you cast your mind back maybe to your childhood and the harsh playgrounds of our youth, taunt is the skill to say something to someone. Usually a brother or a sister or a sibling is very good at this. They know how to push your button. They know the right thing to say to wind you up and to get you either arguing or to get you befuddled and kind of out of sorts. So taunt is a skill that you've picked up, that you're able to sort of glean quite quickly what someone's social armor, where it's weak, and you can taunt them. That works both in sort of social situations. You can get them to maybe overstep the mark or tell you something that they weren't meaning to say because they're a little bit sort of het up. But also maybe in a combat situation, you can taunt someone into sort of maybe running away or doing something that they shouldn't have. So it's a good kind of combination skill there.
I see. Thank you. Something I wish I had in real life.
Yeah, useful skill.
Oh, we've got some very good special effects coming in from Cam. Oh, and he's dropped out. So we're down one player already. So it's a lethal situation. Oh,
can you hear me?
Voice? We can hear your voice from beyond. Yes.
Interesting.
I loot the body.
And we're away. This is great. So underneath your skills,
lore. Sorry, did I miss lore?
So lore, yeah, as I was saying before, lore is that kind of understanding of the supernatural and magical world. So if you have
what?
lore,
I heard lore and not
yeah.
lore.
Sorry, I should have said
I'm quite-
LORE. Yeah,
quite tired, so that's totally
that is
my
fine.
excuse. Okay, cool.
So lore, yeah. Lore is also when you tend to cast spells, you're going to use your lore versus someone's conviction. Now, conviction is a skill a few of you have, and that is your perseverance and your conviction to stand your ground. So as a magical spell washes over you or a fey glamour entices you forwards, you're going to really try and not move. You're going to really try not succumb to it or be beholden to them. So your conviction versus their lore. And we're going to come on to kind of those kinds of skill tests in a moment. But yeah, so lore, understanding of the magical world, and both the creatures and the effects.
I feel it's a little compounded in Edinburgh, at least, because law and lore both sound like they come from a bookshop called Avisandum, which is 100% a wizard bookshop name, even if it only sells very dry law text.
That is true. And having the fact that there's a Scots word that things like dry law, it's a location as well as a legal standing, as well as an understanding of things arcane and profane. So we've got the triple homonyms and homophones. So we'll push forwards and see if we can do it. So underneath your skills, you should have a set of traits. Now, traits, as I was saying, are things that are a little bit more than something you're born with. They're something you've honed, something sometimes mystical that allows you to have forged this knowledge of the other world, to have pierced the veil and have some understanding of this strange world. There's a range of them. I'm going to maybe start off with two of you I know have something called artifact, and it will say we're going to have a look at that and create that. Artifact just means you have a minor magical artifact. It's something that can help you out. Now, it can do two things. It can do things like add to a skill. So you might have an incredibly sharp mystical blade that is incredibly good when you're, say, in a melee combat, which adds +2 to melee. But also, if you spent a force of will, a point of will, you could cut through anything with this knife. So it has a magical effect and a skill effect. But you can create one, and we can discuss what kind of minor artifact you have. You might have, for example, and these are examples from a set of glasses, like rose-tinted glasses that allow awareness and your investigation to be increased by +2. But also, if you spend a point of will, you have the sight, which means you can pierce the veil and see fae and ghosts as they are in real life. So that's the kind of thing you might have as an artifact, which is one of the traits two of you have. I believe two of you have breaking and entering. And hopefully you should see in breaking and entering, that gives you some bonus to things like your stealth, and your investigation and technology while you're attempting to either break in physically to a place, whether that's a lock, climbing in a window, or even, say, encasing the security of a place, perhaps electronically hacking them. So breaking and entering is a skill you can do that. A few of you have the sight. The sight is much like some of the elders of the community may believe in Orkney, they're able to see things of the other world. So it allows you to see through the magical, sometimes the glamours of fae. It doesn't let you see through them, but it lets you know that what you're seeing is a glamour or an illusion. It also allows you to see ghosts that haven't yet manifest. They may be walking the street, but they've not made themselves known, but you with a sight can detect them. If you think of the Sixth Sense, the child in the Sixth Sense was definitely both blessed and cursed with the sight. So think of it that way. Gutter Mage, you have a couple of things. You are a magical character. So you have a couple of things under your traits. You're going to have some magical skills. You've got blessings and curses. Now, these are two sides of a coin. Blessing is you can bless someone nearby to you. As long as you can see them and they can hear you speak, they don't have to understand you, but as long as they're within hearing of you and you can see them, you can bless them so that their actions are benefited, so they can get a skill bonus of +2 at doing something. You can also, with your Gutter Mage in particular, if you want to, bless an item, which perhaps is a sword or a bullet in a gun, and for one attack, that item will act as if it is blessed, which means it can cut through the immaterium, it can hit a magical creature, or cut through a veil of magic. On the opposite of that, you have a curse. Now,
Excellent.
a curse, yes, it has two forms. You've got the curse where you curse someone, and they're going to take some will damage. If it's successful, you're going to go your law versus their conviction. And if they are cursed, they're going to take some will damage. And if you reduce them to 0 will, curse will take effect on them. Now, some of these can be fairly brutal and usually end up in death or serious misadventure. They might be cursed with ill luck until they pass, or they get a disease and wither and pass away. But you can also hex or curse an object, normally a small handheld object, and destroy it. So sometimes you'll see in some magical systems you can hurl hexes and shatter mirrors, break things. So something that you can do with your curses is you can curse someone or a thing with the gestures and power that sits within you. But you've not just got blessings and curse, you've got a few other things up your sleeve as the Gutter Mage. You also have Divination. Now, Divination means that, and contrary to popular belief, does not mean you can read the future. You can read the present, certainly in the divination that you have. It means you can divine. It normally takes an hour, and there'll be you'll notice on your sheet there will be a will cost and a challenge rating. You're going to use your law skill, spend the will, and you're going to try and find something out. Now, with the first level of divination, you can find something out that's that's general about a subject and is known by more than 13 people. And this is a nice number here because in the liminal system, a cabal is usually less than 13, and it's because if something is less known by less than 13, it's harder to divine. To do that, you'd have to go to the next level and spend more will and have a higher challenge rating, and then you could find out something known by less than 13, or that was a wider secret but be more specific. And finally, there's a third level where you spend a lot of will and there's a very high challenge rating, and then you find out something obscure and specific that's very hard to know. The last thing,
I love it.
it's very useful, but it's about things that are presently happening in your case. And one last thing that you've got as the Gutter Mage is you have Geomancy, which is the understanding and knowledge taken from the land around you. A mage, a magician, or a wizard can attune themselves to the landscape. So you may have walked the streets of Edinburgh muttering and talking to yourself, and to others it may seem perhaps touched or a little mad, but you are actually finding and understanding the city of Edinburgh, both the subsurface rocks, the geology of it, so its peoples and its inhabitants, and as such, kind of have a keener awareness itself. You can add, whenever you boost a skill by +1 with your will, you get +2 instead, when you're in your area that knows it. The other thing, and I think I've got it written in the sheet, is you can sometimes understand if something, the general area of a magical effect, be that a large magical effect or something, maybe the location of a ghostly domain or a fey kingdom, you can roughly know or something serious happened. A magical world, maybe a large event or spell, you might get an understanding of something is happening. For the others, I think there's some other skills, some other traits. I'm just trying to remember because I have not got them up in front of me, but I'm going to try and...
I've got Fight On.
Fight On. Great. So, with Fight On, it's kind of like your character, the trait is that you're determined. So even when you're getting damage, you can use will and spend will points to negate physical damage to you. So you can kind of get up and keep going. Even if you're being knocked down, you're going to use that will to strive to keep going. So you're very hard to put down, both in a sort of a physical fight, but if there's some stuff happening to you, whether there's magical effects that buffet you around, you can push yourself on and keep going with Fight On. And spend will to negate endurance damage.
Oh, I like it.
Any other traits that people are quizzical or that are not self-explanatory?
So I'm...
The rest
I
of mine are
noticed I
pretty
have a limitation.
Oh, yeah, I'll get to that in a second, Matt. So, Cam, what were you saying?
Oh yeah, so I'm rich apparently.
So rich, and I think I've just said after that, sometimes money does make the difference. And in this case, you're rich, rich enough that you can throw money at problems. So whether that's researching, whether that's buying equipment, whether it's buying obscure grimoire, whether that's employing people to do things, but also to perhaps persuade people. You've got some money. You've probably got a nice house. You've got a location. You've got wealth and perks that come with it. So not to be sneered at. It's useful and can be very effective in investigating.
Yeah.
So you're our Bruce Wayne.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'll get an animal mask prepared.
Yes, a creature of the night. Fantastic, and hopefully you won't get a sort of a cough and have to just talk in a deep voice for the time. So some of you will have a limitation, and that is something that either I think one of you has marked. I think is that Lou? You've got marked.
Mm-hmm.
Now this means something that sets you aside from other people. It means that people that engage regularly with the supernatural world or the Fae sometimes change. For some imperceptibly, but for others noticeably. Perhaps the colour of your eyes has faded. Perhaps your shadow is no longer. Something that sets you apart from others. Marked. And Matt, your sort of limitation is that you are obliged, meaning something happened in your past where you were beholden to another group. Given that you're a clued up criminal, that could be a criminal organization, but it could be supernatural entities. It could be members of a Fae court or a vampire coven or a hunting group of werewolves. Something has happened where you owe them something, and at some point they might come calling. So you can take some time to think about that. Is there any traits or limitations that I've not covered that are on folks' sheet?
I've got counter magic as well, so I can counter.
Yeah, you can counter. So counter magic is a very useful skill. It means that through your research, you've kind of understand, rather than casting spells, you realize how you can kind of deflect or kind of wash out magic. Now, it's both for yourself and you can also do it for others, but you're going to make a skill test and try and drain away the magic, which means you would deflect any of the hexes or the malevolence that would be in the magic and help the others around you or yourself. So good skill to have in the world of magical mysteries. A few other, if hopefully that's given you some idea of the skills and the traits that you possess. You'll each have a little damage bit down at the bottom. If it just sort of says D6, that normally means that you kind of don't usually carry a weapon. You can do fisticuffs or in a melee or kind of wrestle with someone. That's the damage you'll do. If it's a little bit higher, you might have a weapon. Usually, if you've got a shoot skill, it might be a small pistol. Particularly in the UK, there's not a lot of armaments that are around, but sort of a small knife or a cudgel or a pistol might be something, particularly as a clued-up criminal, you might have. I think also you've got marksman, which means you do have a skill at shooting just at a distance.
I have a very nice little pistol tucked away in my skirts, don't you worry.
Oh, very nice. A little derringer. So, in terms of things, so skills and using them, as I said, there's the challenge rating, which will be usually an 8. If it's something difficult, it'll be a 10. And you're going to roll your 2d6. You're going to add your appropriate skill. If you don't have a skill, you can still try. It just means you roll 2d6 flat and you don't add a skill. But if you've got a trait that helps out, add that trait bonus on. Normally that will be a +2 or something like that. That's against the things in the world, which is, might be the weather or falling down, climbing up a piece of gutter as you're trying to break in somewhere. But if you're against something, whether that's another mortal or one of the material world, you're going to do an opposed check, which just means I'm going to have a list of skills that the people and the creatures you face have, and I'll add their skill level in something to the challenge rating. So, for example, if you're against a rogue mage who's been cast out of his brethren and is on the run, and you track him down, turns on you and tries to cast some kind of hex or spell, that mage would have a conviction and a law setting. If you were trying to cast a spell on them, you would use your law skill and you'd roll your 2d6, and they would use their conviction, which essentially I would add their level of, say in this case of this rogue mage is a 3 in conviction, to to an 8, so you'd have to roll 11 over to spell to be effective. Same in combat, they're going to have either athletics or a melee skill, or if they're not used to fighting, they might not have any skill, in which case it's still just going to sit at 8. But if not, I'm going to add their melee skill to the challenge rating, so it might be a 10, 11. But don't forget, you've always got will to bump up your successes, and it's great in this game, particularly because we're doing sort of this session 0 and then the one shot. Use your will, and then take some time to kick in that drive, get motivated, maybe even have a rest, and keep fighting the good fight. So don't forget to use your will to modify. So from just that discussion, has everyone got kind of an understanding or an idea for how they could kind of use that character or flesh them out or kind of get a character concept going? And if you want to, you can take a few moments now just to sort of maybe come up with a name or maybe perhaps a physical description of your character. Because then, in a moment, we're going to move on to crew creation, which is how do you know each other, what binds you together, and what pushes you forwards together as a group. So whilst they're chatting amongst themselves and doing some reading and writing, I'll talk to you, the stream. And hopefully it's not too distracting for the rest of them as they think of things. So we're going to be using Liminal, but also because we're doing an online session, I'm going to talk to them in a bit in a moment about just the safety tools we're going to use. But also for you there listening at home, if you're playing in a role-playing server or you're playing in a game with people who you not know, maybe you don't know them, maybe they're good friends, but they're straying into areas that you don't feel comfortable with, we're going to be using the X system, which just means you can lift up an X. You can either draw it on a piece of paper like I have, cross your arms. If you're feeling uncomfortable or put out by the things that are going on, then we'll stop that and we'll kind of move away from it and do it in a veiled manner. For this game, I'm going to try to keep most things veiled and less explicit, but it is a supernatural setting, so there are elements of horror in this, the supernatural. So hopefully we can do that in a manner that's sort of spooky and sets atmosphere, explicitly gory or profane. So that's what I'm going to aim for. And hopefully our players heard that as well. So if the rest of you are happy, you can put an X on a card. Or as I say, cross your arms with a little X and just let me know, yeah, this is not an area I want to talk about or stray into. Not to be confused with doing your power salutes, so your superhero power salute in different games. Yeah. So, have you had a chance to just have a little think about characters and maybe get an idea? Does anyone want to sort of roughly describe? At the moment, we're just doing brushstrokes, so you don't have to nail anything down. But if anyone would like to describe or let us know what they've brushed out so far.
I've got a little pitch for you. So, Craig Gillespie, the most basic character name I've ever had, is a delivery cyclist. You can see him puttering around most days with a little bag of, for the purposes of this game and any legal waivers, the delivering company that does a lot of takeaways. However, he is in fact rather obliged to a Fey patron that has long since been intertwined with his family, going back many, many hundreds of years. And this Fey patron, he doesn't know too much about, but they have given him this gift, this artifact. So his bicycle will never wear out, the brakes will always work, the gears will always shift smoothly, it will never have a puncture, it will never rust. And it gives him, or at least I'm going to pitch that it gives me a little bonus to any bike-related rolls I might need to make, anything presumably involving athletics. But Edinburgh is very much a city of, there's lots of graveyards for a start, there's lots of bridges, there's lots of odd little bits of water everywhere, so, and there's obviously many, many hills, as anyone here will know. So I quite like the idea that there are a lot of invisible boundaries that, for various incredibly obtuse reasons, Fae and other supernatural creatures cannot or will not cross. So Craig Gillespie's kind of a middleman. He can take what you need from where it needs to be to where it needs to be, and if that is, you know, some delightful Ting Tai caravan, delicious Thai food, recommend them, or if it's, you know, a Virgin's Heart that needs to be in Newington in like 20 minutes, he's your man. However, obviously, this means that he is carrying often fairly illegal things, and as such has a somewhat dubious income stream.
I like it. Very nicely done. Thank you. I do like that you've given yourself a magical artifact that would be the envy of any delivery or courier, which is a bike that never fails. And for the viewers, if you know in Edinburgh, Edinburgh's incredibly hilly and there's wobbles and it destroys bikes, particularly if you're a courier, and it's often slick and dangerous for bike couriers. So that is an artifact of envy for many people. I'd also say, just tinker it a little bit, is you sort of talked about these wines and ways. I'm going to speak in a little while about one of the factions that actually works within Edinburgh, the Aldermen. And they're an ancient compact, which are sort of traders and tinkerers who are able to open doorways from one space to another, whether in the world to an immaterial realm or from 2 points on the globe. And perhaps your bicycle is somehow bound up with that, and the Fae have an agreement that your bike can navigate the ways that are unseen, which is why you can sometimes get to places more quickly or turn up somewhere unexpectedly on your bicycle, sort of as the sort of second aspect of it.
This means that I do not need to cycle all the way up Hanover Street. Great, sold, I'm in.
I think that's the best effect of any magical item could have. Yes. Great. So we've got Craig Gillespie, who is our clued up criminal, and has a magical steed in the form of a bicycle. Anyone else want to dip a toe in the water and share anything you've come up with?
Yeah, I've got something. So I think my name's going to be Lilith Hazelstar. Not my real name, but it's good for for the tourists and for the people to whom I ply my trade, which is
nice.
selling sort of low-level magical solutions to those who are in the know. So say you've got a job interview coming up and you need a little boost of confidence, I can give you a blessing that will help you kind of get your foot in the door. Or say that you've got a rival who you really want to fail, bring me an object of theirs, I'll pop a curse on it, and you just won't need to worry about them anymore. So I'm a sort of, illicit gutter magician, kind of making money in slightly dubious ways. And I've got, I think, magical artifact-wise, I've got a coin that, while I'm holding it, what I'm thinking is, it makes people think that they've kind of seen me somewhere before. So it's really good for striking up conversations and finding new business opportunities.
Very nice. So it's going to give you, a sense of empathy with you, and a kind of I do know you. I do recognize you.
Thing, right?
Yeah. So I'll give that. Yeah, it's definitely a bonus, like to give yourself essentially a charm skill with +2 or an empathy, but also that mystical effect where they're like very sure. Yeah. No, I do know you. I've seen. Yes. Yeah. My cousins. Yeah. Fantastic. Or something like that. Yeah. That sounds great. So that's Lilith Hazelstar is our gutter mage. Very nice. I can already see possibly some connections there with the dubious underground connections. Anne or Cam?
I'll go next. So my character is Garia Reed, and she runs a used and specialist bookshop in Edinburgh's Old Town. And for some of her customers, she will procure that little tome that they've been eyeing up in maybe someone else's library, or other libraries have been encountered.
So you're an antiquarian book dealer of seedier texts that may or may not be grimoires or dark tomes.
I have a book for everyone.
A book for everyone. Very nice. I like that. Very good. Again, I'm sensing some potential connections here. That's very good. So Daria Reed, did you say?
Daria. Gari.
Oh, Garia. Nice. Garia Reed is our investigator.
It's the Scots for short, because she's only 4'9".
Oh, Garia. Good size, and
she needs 6 steps to get to the top of all her shelves.
Very nice. My name in Old Scots, Cameron. I don't know if it's the same as Camden, but Cameron means hook nosed. So short and hook nosed. And Cam.
Yeah, so I think my character is Professor Fletcher Reynolds, or disgraced professor now. I think previously it was a professor of something like medicine or something along those lines, and his previous passion was was teaching and was his subject topic. But I think during his research, or potentially some of his students had been disappearing, looking into one of the research topics he decided was of interest, that was dabbling in the sort of maybe in the Fey world, and he didn't originally realize. And when he started questioning this this kind of thing and following it up, the higher ups in his university or institution shut him down and fired him, and sort of erased all traces of his previous research. And I think he is kind of looking for a way to reclaim his academic grandeur and hopefully find out what happened to some of his research staff. And he sort of spent the rest of his time since then holed away in a small flat filled with books to try and figure out what this world that he thinks people have been disappearing into.
Great. And that's a really nice backstory there, because it also started to focus in on something I was going to talk next of, which is drive. What is driving your character? So yours might be discovering why it is that you're cast out and how to deal with that, and how to put that to right. Why were you cast out of the academic? You covered it up, perhaps. Maybe. But yes, have a think about what drives your character. What is the thing that, if they achieve this sort of longing and this need to dabble in magic, or keep seeking, or keep working, what would alleviate that? What would give a sense of redemption, or return you almost to a life of where you could feel, I'm not on the outside, I'm not fallen world that others don't know about. What is driving you to seek? Now, it could be revenge, it could be more esoteric than that, knowledge. Have a moment to think about what's at the core of your character driving them.
I think that Professor Reynolds has driven to a sort of I think he wants to conclusively prove that this other world exists. He wants to get this one piece of information that he thinks will convince everyone, so he can sort of overthrow his previous bosses and say, the secret's out. It's all.
So you're looking for that kind of key piece of knowledge that will literally unlock the hidden world and show it for what it is to everyone. So that's a grand ideal to sort of overthrow the people keeping the darkness dark and the minds of the general public fogged. You want to find that piece of information that will cut through that. Nice, that's a good drive, a very solid one. Any of the rest of you have? We don't have to have it right now because we're going to have a little bit more of a discussion. But if it comes to you, by the end of the session, hopefully we can have a sense of what's driving your characters. So for this next section, we're going to talk about the crew. In a sense, in Liminal, you play a crew, much like an adventuring band in Dungeons and Dragons, who are often sort of wandering around together, often for no apparent reason. But in Liminal, there's a very concrete reason. There's a close-knit crew. And you have reasons for being working together and to be tied together. So I'm going to I'd like you to sort of think about how could you be related to sort of socially or emotionally to the other characters that would make you want to work with them, or to investigate with them, or to put your lives in their hands. And what's nice is there's a couple of things that might overlap, but have a chat amongst yourselves and try and decide what is your connection, what's cohesive about you.
Something I've noticed is that we all have a very loose connection with this magical business, and we're all kind of outsiders within it. I'm kind of working on the outside. None of us have any sort of real super powerful magic, Lilith notwithstanding, perhaps. And there's this area that we're trying to, kind of on the outside of the whole magical sphere, we're trying to get in, you know. Professor Reynolds, you're obviously much more sort of trying to find proof. Garia, you're looking to sort of, you know, find all these volumes and tomes. And Hazel, you've got this. Hazel, Lilith, you've got this kind of reputation. I think it seems as someone, you know, in very much sort of witch in the storybooks idea. Like polite society would perhaps not come and knock on your door, but you would definitely, you're definitely someone you can go down into some seedy close in the grass market and get some charms off of. So I wonder if there's something in this idea that we're all not only outside our mainstream and the normal society, but we're also a little bit on the outside of this kind of greater magical world. We're in that kind of gloaming between the two.
Almost
and
the liminal
like
space.
you've just blown my mind, Cameron. You have blown my mind. So I'm wondering if perhaps we all, and something about, I don't know about drives for Lilith or for Garia, but certainly Craig's, I think, is very much going to be about pushing forwards into this Fey world. If there is perhaps some agreement we have between the four of us of helping one another out as fellow humans, trying to break into Fey society, there's something there. Maybe we all want proof, power, riches. Who can say? But we understand that we're all in the same boat in terms of our social position in this setup. That's my elevator pitch, guys.
Yeah,
I really like that.
Yes. So if I'm hearing that right, are you saying that maybe it's like a loose group who comes together to help each other investigate and push forward sort of your own aims and drives, but you do it, as a almost like a loose group of investigators, or more as like even a business?
I think in my mind, we're all, you know, we're all on the same WhatsApp group. And if someone's like, oh, hey, do you guys know where I can find this book? Or, oh, hey, someone's friend of mine is, you know, just gone through a bad breakup. Can I drop them your number to get someone cursed? Or, you know, Craig, do you know where any good little, you know, fairy takeaways are? Not much.
Yeah.
But I think that kind of semi-loose, semi-0 hours contract association we might have. How it feels, you know. Maybe we get together once a month, have ourselves some tasty Bonnie burrito, and go over our finds.
So does that sit well with the rest of you? I'm seeing some nods during that chat. Yeah.
Yeah, I think definitely Professor Reynolds will have certainly interacted, I think, quite a lot with Garia to source various books on his research as well.
We've met.
Yeah, definitely.
You're in my shop so often you get discount.
Yeah, well, I hope so. I mean, I tip well.
And you definitely feel like you know Lilith. I mean, you remember right from that thing with her cousin. Seemed really familiar.
Cousin friend of mine. Yeah, the face rings a bell, definitely.
And I could easily see Lilith being the one who's calling up Craig, sort of being like, "Could you bring me a virgin's heart? Like, really, really quickly? Like, it's kind of time sensitive."
Which colour? Have it there by 4 o'clock.
Great. So, kind of, your affiliates, you're sort of a gang, a sort of Scooby gang who sort of know each other and have helped each other before, and sort of sort of seeking to strive to uncover the true nature of the world and push forward to that by helping each other as best as you can. Great. And so, would you say, I mean, is there a goal to defeat a particular entity, or is it more about the veil that's being pulled across? You know, because you can, if you want to conceive of, is there a big arch enemy that maybe you've come across in the past? You can generate that yourselves, or is it more just that the injustice of this kind of hidden world that the others should know about that you're seeking to break through?
I mean, it's recognition on some level, and I would say for this, if we're pushing into the Fey realm, recognition by some faction or multiple factions within that as being part of society. You know, maybe there's fairy ball of some kind. Maybe there's something that we need. We're all looking to be invited to make our debut, to be presented as, some entity or hanger-on of some court.
Yeah, I think that I think I want sort of recognition of from the people who disgraced my work and disgraced me. And I want to sort of pierce that veil and say, look, see, it's real and you can't refute it, and you should give me my old post back with a pay rise.
5 nights in a fairy court would be an amazing Vice article.
Yeah, perfect. Be a great thesis.
Great thesis, and the reason you should get tenure. You should be
exactly.
Yeah. Great. So in a moment, we're going to talk about, you kind of alluded to these courts or these factions, and we're going to talk about factions. We're just going to finish off a little bit more with the crew, which is you're going to now each get to go round, and you're going to decide on an asset that you have amongst you as a group. Now, the great thing about the assets is they're up for interpretation. They could be things like a base of operations. Do you have like a physical location where one of you has found a place you can all go to? It could be connections. Do you have particular connections within the city of Edinburgh, whether that's within the magical communities? Do you have people who actually really enjoy what you do and want to help you, so that like hangers on, or people who kind of drawn to what you do but maybe not as committed as you, but they'll help you? Do you have a specific hated enemy that can be an asset, someone who is out for you? But yeah, could be libraries, particular grimoires. It could be a workshop, engineering shop. It could be cars. It could be somewhere to stay. But have a think, and I'll come around to each of you and ask you for one asset you think the group together might have. And I might give you a moment on that to think about it. And we can talk this through. I mean, there's no wrong answer to this. If it's too way out of the ballpark, I'm happy to put it in. So try and think. What would work well by a group of allied people who work in the city of Edinburgh to try and pierce the veil and uncover ages-long conspiracy to silence the magical domain. I might go to Anne. What kind of asset do you think the should have?
So obviously I have my shop, and I conveniently have a flat just above my shop, as it should be. And in that flat is my personal library.
Yes.
Those slightly special tomes. And the reason Garia is so interested in the world of the Fae, when she was 6 years old, her great aunt Morak gave her this really strange book of fairy tales that she really loved and read over and over again. And then one day the book disappeared, and so did her great aunt Morag. And she's kind of to find that book again. So ever since that, she's been collecting books and seeking out strange tomes. So she's got her own little library in her flat, and she makes a good cup of tea. So it's where everyone hangs out for a cup of tea. Biscuits too, obviously.
Excellent. So we've got an occult library situated in above your bookshop that is accessible by the crew. Tea and biscuits. I mean, that sounds like a glorious asset, right?
Ideal.
Dick. Lou, what kind of asset do you think the crew has?
I'm wondering if maybe Lilith, and through Lilith, kind of the rest of the crew has some connections in the sort of the seedier side of the entertainment world. So since a lot of, like, most people don't know about the existence of the Fey world, a lot of what Lilith does for a living is kind of things that most people think are magic tricks and therefore fake. So I think maybe she's got some kind of like entertainment contacts doing kind of like, spooky seances and things like that. And maybe through that she's introduced some of them to the rest of the crew. So we all kind of, we've got these contacts of dubious usefulness perhaps, but
that could be a good organization of people to tap into. So there is stage magicians. There's also in Edinburgh there's a lot of buskers, and there are artists, cabaret artists, things like that have this sort of toy with the dark side of human nature that you yeah, you might be well in with them. That'd be a good network of people. Yeah, so I could, so things like street magician, buskers, and entertainers of a certain ilk. Thanks, Lou. That sounds like a great asset. Cam, what kind of asset do you think the group should have?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think, to my mind, I was gonna say I think Gary's bookshop and flat would. I think that's where Professor Reynolds has been doing a lot of his research. I feel like if perhaps also we've been looking into disappearances together. I think maybe if I've been missing a couple of research students, and you've got your missing relatives, then perhaps we sort of are looking for similar information over tea and biscuits.
Now, you mentioned earlier that it might be, for example, that Professor Reynolds might have been in medicine, because perhaps the other thing is do you have access, when you're talking about sort of missing students as well, is there medical facilities that's something you could also have access to, as well as the library and research?
Yeah, I think that sort of technically speaking, I don't have access anymore, but I think that I copied the keys to get into the university facilities. So after dark, when when people aren't in, perhaps I know the odd janitor or two. I can sometimes make use of those if I'm cautious.
Great, and would that be an asset you would make available as well? So the ability to,
I think so, yeah. As long as it's clear that it's usually got to be a nighttime activity.
Okay, some key passes to university buildings and other. I'm going to say, because there's research hospital as well, that perhaps some overlap there with the maybe even access to the org. We'll find out. Good. Thanks for Cam. And Matt, what kind of asset would you like?
I think the asset I would like is people. So I think I'm probably not the only delivery cyclist type person with a touch of the occult to their lives. So I would like basically a good network of fellow cyclists who can be called upon for basically just doing me a favor, or doing any of the crew a favor. Perhaps we sort of offer out little favors or little magical trinkets or something as a reward.
Okay, so we're talking like sort of like the service you provide, like delivering things, but not like a gang who are like offer. We can help you. My gang of bike guys could come and
No. More that we've just got a bit of a network around town, so we can delivery cyclists go everywhere, so they'll always sort of know what the areas are like. They might know who's doing what. A lot of people doing them have second or third jobs, so there's a lot of social networking available in such a group. So I think that'd be a useful asset to have, is just being able to put word out and say like, oh yeah, we suddenly need to become experts in fine china because the fairies have encoded it into an old tea set or something. Who do we know who's good in fine china? That sort of thing.
And the thunder rolls ominously above Edinburgh. Thanks for the soundbite. So that sounds great. So as a crew, it sounds like you're actually well provided in terms of research and network. So you've got an occult library situated above Garia's shop. You've got a good network of performers and street magicians and people, seedier people to sort of tap into the mystical, semi-mystical world. You've got access to medical facilities and or research facilities at the university, and a network of couriers and delivery people who know the ins and outs of the street and people to go to. Sounds like a well provisioned investigative group. Just before we go on to the next section, which will be how are you connected to the factions around the city, and I'm going to talk to you a bit about the factions that are there and how you might feel about them. We're going to do a section where you get to say whether you're positive or negatively inclined towards them. Work out as a group, how do they feel about you, them. But before we do that, let's have, if anyone needs a bio break or a comfort break, I'm just going to pause the video so we can go off and do that, and we'll come back and continue in a moment. So trying to take 5.
Brilliant.
Good plan.
Thanks, you guys. See you in a minute.
Right. See you in a minute.